there, Chevron employees, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Sam, and I moderate these presentations. In just a second, we'll be joined by Patrick Ray. He is one of our senior financial advisors here, very experienced in Chevron retirement plans. And Patrick is going to be speaking to you about how, if you are living on a fixed income, how those lower tax increases will affect you. Before he comes on, though, just a couple quick housekeeping items to go over with you. First and foremost, please remember that we are not affiliated nor endorsed whatsoever by Chevron. We are a third party. We are a completely independent group of financial advisors, so please keep that in mind. Next, you can use the description box below and click on those links. They will guide you to our website where you can book a complimentary 15-minute block of time with one of our Chevron-focused financial advisors to speak to them about your Chevron retirement plan. You can get updated or get started or just ask any questions or cover any concerns you may have. And lastly, please consider following us here on YouTube. Follow us on LinkedIn. We post tons of Chevron retirement focused content weekly, and we really think you'd get some value out of it if you considered giving us a follow. And with all of that out of the way, let's get started with Patrick Ray.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. My name is Patrick Ray, and I appreciate your attention this afternoon, and hopefully we'll have some guidance on some things that I feel like are often overlooked when we help people transition from an employee to a retiree. And so today we're going to talk about some of the general tax strategies that could be considered or things that you want to be mindful of while transitioning for certainly one of the most frustrating and what is deemed stressful in many cases transitions, because this is a big deal. And for people who move into retirement, it's typically the first time that they've ever done that. And so let's talk about a few things that you may want to either consider or certainly be aware of. And some of these things relate to utilizing your income sources. So for example, when we talk about the discussion of Social Security benefits and when to claim them, when to consider how they apply to you, how they apply to your spouse if you're married, and when they may be eligible and what might impact them if one spouse suffers an untimely death. And so these are all things that you want to be mindful of for sure. And mostly it's potentially delaying the benefits so that you get the most out of the system, assuming that you live to life expectancy. So optimizing your Social Security benefits is for sure on our list of utilizing income sources when it comes to generalized tax planning for certain. Exploring some part-time work. This is often a discussion we have with people who may have a shortfall. Maybe there's a window of time like between 62 and 65 where they don't want to pay for their medical insurance, but they don't want to work a full-time job. And so oftentimes it makes sense for you to consider a less stressful environment, somewhere that maybe you can work for a vendor that you might have worked for or with while you were working at the company you were working for to help supplement your income and your income needs. And certainly, assuming that you're beyond the age of 59 and a half, of course, there are potential options for you to withdraw money from your retirement accounts to help supplement that number to get you to a certain window where you're comfortable. And even if you're not prior to or after 59 and a half, prior to, there are options that you have under the IRS rules that you may want to check out our retirement video that talks about specific and strategic planning prior to age 59 and a half and how you can avoid the 10% penalty. So all of these things are relevant to considerations for utilizing your income sources for sure. And then maybe one that goes often overlooked or unthought of in a general context, which is your rental properties and making sure that they're housed or that they're full so that you get additional revenue or income sources from those that are being unused for certain. This is a tough one for many people because often when you're working and in your working years, you have not used a budget for the general context of what you live off of from day to day or from week to week or from month to month. But certainly tracking your expenditures is a massive deal. And if there's anything that we could recommend that you do, if you haven't already done so, is get yourself an understanding of what a 3 to 6 month window looks like. There are a ton of applications and free spreadsheets and things to help you monitor your expenses. Many of these financial banking institutions that you're utilizing have these opportunities where you can track expenses and just give yourself a better understanding of what you actually need to help you prioritize the essentials from the non-essentials. And so prioritizing this helps you with understanding what the needs are for housing. And healthcare and food and primary expenditures that you're going to need for the rest of your life, obviously. And so we want to make sure we focus and put a prioritization on that. And then if you can consider cutting expenses, oftentimes when we're transitioning into a scenario where you're only using 80 or 85% of the income that you've been accustomed to living off of, you want to consider reducing your discretionary expenditures for sure. Things that are related to entertainment and various subscriptions that you may not be using on a regular basis. Certainly, all things to be mindful of and to recognize for sure. Take advantage of your tax benefits. And so, for example, what I'm speaking of specifically are senior tax credits, things that help explore credits like medical expense deductions and senior specific benefits. Don't overlook the importance of how that may play a role in your retirement. Also, talking about tax efficient withdrawals and retirement, we do an entire presentation on the tax efficiency of your retirement cash flow. And so withdrawing money from things like Roth IRAs or tax advantaged accounts or things that you have invested in your individual accounts that could be utilized from a tax beneficial perspective, all things you want to be considering when trying to take advantage of the best tax related opportunities when you transition into retirement. And certainly the state benefits. Are there benefits to the state programs that are being offered for property taxes and given a certain age for certain senior benefits that might be available, energy subsidies and for senior discounts and things of this nature, all things that certainly we are not too big to be paying attention to when we want to do what's best for our family in the grand scheme of it. Paying off debt and other financial obligations, certainly paying down your high interest credit card and outstanding liabilities is a big deal. We want to target and have a specific plan to ensure that that gets mitigated to the greatest degree it can. And so we want to attack those with the most of aggressiveness that we possibly can. And so this may consider or things to consider, which is like consolidating loans, helping lower your monthly payments through either refinancing or consolidation. Any of these types of things certainly might be on the table for some who need to consider the obligations and or liabilities that they have to help them with a efficient and lower cost retirement. And clearly avoiding new debt is a big deal. The old saying goes, don't buy it if you can't afford it. And jokingly, you probably can't afford it in buying a Bentley as opposed to buying a new car of a Ford or a Chevy or some sort. So certainly we want to avoid the larger purchases, especially if they're financed, because there's costs that are associated with that. And then it just extends into deep into our retirements where we continue to have to make a plan for that. So be mindful of that for sure. Managing healthcare costs is a big deal, obviously, and certainly with for those of you who are in that window of being prior to age 65, and maybe you have retirement eligible benefits from the company that you work for, which is great, but there are certain things that you want and need to consider with supplemental plans and reviews of your current policy and the cost and expenditures of that, and what those deductibles, as an example, are to make sure you have emergency proceeds that are available to cover that in the event that they are needed. And of course, this continues into the preventative care discussion, which is many of the new plans now require you or give you bonuses and benefits to having the preventative care thought process where you utilize free or low cost screenings and things that help you avoid future medical problems. And so certainly those are things to obviously consider. And then on the HSA and FSA side, make sure that you're utilizing and funding these to the greatest degree you can, especially the HSAs, because they don't have the same requirements as an FSA does for spending them in a given tax year. And ultimately, in the event that you're over 65 and you don't need the HSA money, you can utilize that for retirement expenses just like you would your other retirement assets. So certainly something you want to give some consideration to if you hadn't already done that. Preserving your nest egg seems to go without a cause for us. We mind this as a fact and need for every single person who asks for our help. And this ties into not just the plan and the plan that we have in place to make sure that someone helps to the greatest degree they can avoid running out of money, which is your biggest risk as a retiree, is running out of money. So diversifying your investments, which could include a myriad of stock, and bond and dividend paying type stocks and other investments and other income generating assets that might be helpful to reduce the risk that you have of running out of money while you are alive. We always advocate that you have an emergency fund. Maintaining and or having access to 6 to 12 months of living expenses is certainly a big deal, and we give a lot of credence to the importance of what that means to a family, especially if it helps avoid calling us for taking larger withdrawals from your IRAs, which ultimately cause potential tax concerns that we have to deal with down the road. And then something that's new age that you're probably all aware of to some degree, we go through an extensive training process to help alleviate and avoid these things at all costs, which are the scams that are important to all of us where we don't want to get taken advantage of. So be cautious of fraudulent schemes and weird emails and text messages that you have gotten, and things like that have barcodes or scanning codes that you have not recognized or you don't know who they're from. Do not scan those, because those ultimately will provide access to your computer, because they download malware to your computers and to your electronic devices. So be aware of all the scams to the greatest degree you can, because this creates obviously a problem that we all want to do our very best to avoid. And here's something that goes untalked about in the most cases that we have, or the average case that we see, which is leveraging community resources and looking out for local assistance programs that you have with food banks and transportation services and other utility related services that that could give you some benefits to accessing senior centers. This one hits home for me because I used to take my grandmother to the senior center for a painting activity every Tuesday and Thursday that she really enjoyed, and this was a free activity for her, and certainly something that gave her something to look forward to. And so I know that was important to her, and so senior centers have a great outline of activities and things that you can all participate in. And then not-for-profits and charities, they're always typically looking for volunteers, things that you could do with your time to help seek support that might ultimately turn into some way to offset the medical expenses and housing assistance that you might look for by leveraging these community programs that are available. Downsizing is certainly something to consider. I mean, if you're an empty nester and it turns out that you don't need 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms any longer for you and your spouse, you clearly might consider downsizing and getting a smaller home and selling your larger property and moving into a more affordable living arrangement. This also might include relocating to a different area, or in fact, an entirely different state. There are some state-specific scenarios that might come into play that you might want to give some consideration to, like some tax-favorable states that don't have state income tax, and they have other benefits to your Social Security benefits and your other pension benefits that might apply that you want to consider. And then a possible shared living expense, or a living arrangement, for shared housing with other family members that might include other retirees. All things that you could consider to help you reduce your overall costs for housing. Planning for inflation, that is the second biggest risk that, in my opinion, serves as a concern, which is outliving your money. Certainly, running out of money is the biggest risk, and then attached to that is how inflation impacts the need for you to have cash flow and monies to live off of if you live past life expectancy, for sure. So investing in inflation protection securities, you could consider things like things called TIPS, which are Treasury Inflated Protected Securities, another word for a bond, that has some adjustments for inflation that are built in. And then adjusting your spending annually is also a big thing. We talk about this in our meetings with our clients, that if you're looking to have a higher expenditure year because you're going to take a bigger trip, or there's a improvement to the home that you're considering making, consider doing that in a year that you have had a successful year in the market. So in other words, as 2024 comes to a close, we've had a pretty good run in the stock market. Maybe now is the time to consider taking some of the profits off the table to otherwise pay for these expenditures that you would have. And conversely, if 2025, as an example, is a flat or a down year, maybe we save those extra expenses and things that might cost us more money and push that off into the following tax year to give yourself a more protection development around your retirement assets, and certainly a way to look at what we call guardrails. And we talk about this at length in our tax efficient retirement strategy. And being flexible certainly is a big key, right? Don't have this mindset that it's all or nothing, or it has to be this given way every single year, year in and year out for the rest of your life. Be mindful that sometimes flexibility is a necessity, and it helps to be flexible with what you're going to spend, how you're going to spend, and what your retirement technically looks like from year to year. So we talked just a minute ago about some potential state benefits. There are some states that have no income tax: Alaska, Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, Texas, Tennessee, Washington, and Wyoming. And so those could potentially help you not just from a state income tax perspective, but some of these states could also give you exempt Social Security and pension income benefits, which could also help the net cash flow that you have. And so even though they have some income tax requirements, of course, from a federal perspective, these are all but fully exempt from Social Security benefits and pension benefits in Alabama, Hawaii, Illinois, Mississippi, and Pennsylvania. So these are all things, again, to be aware of when we're considering how to make the most of a retirement scenario. And so this ties into some of the state tax considerations. And so while some states don't have Social Security or pension taxation on their benefits, they have higher property and sales tax. And so sometimes they offset, and one's lower on one state front and another one's higher on another. So each state has their own unique rules for pension and income exemptions. And so I encourage you to look those up way prior to you considering moving to a state that might be beneficial, or that you might think might be beneficial. And so some of these states allow partial exclusions based on income and age as another example. All things to consider. And in the end, the biggest takeaway is consult with your tax person. If you don't have a tax person, maybe the retirement year that you transition into retirement is the year that you consider hiring a tax professional to ensure that there are no mistakes and that you cross all the T's and dot all the I's. Now, the reality is we know that most people over the age of 50 do not have a written financial plan. In fact, 74% of the people over the age of 50 don't have a written financial plan. And there's really no excuse for that, primarily because there are firms like ours that use this as a pathway to introduce their services to you, so that if you're looking for a partner in retirement, you could consider working with an individual who might be and look out for your best interest. And so having said that, this is a process that we go through that if you're willing to spend some time with us, we're delighted to spend some time with you. And so you may be thinking, why should we consider the retirement group? And it's because our team has a ton of experience in working with Fortune 100 employee personnel transitioning into retirement, which is one of the most stressful events that you'll ever have to go through. We have offices all across the country, and we have a deep knowledge of most of your 401k and your pension plans and your medical plans. And so if you have some time to spend with us, we have a complimentary cash flow analysis that I just mentioned we do not charge for, and it's a way for you to kind of stress test where you're at from a financial planning and a retirement planning scenario. So if this seems to be something that you might be interested in, please email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. You can also call us at 800-900-5867. And if you feel so inclined, you could take a picture of this QR code to the left, and it will get you access to my calendar or one of my teammates' calendars, where you can pick a time that's convenient for you for us to chat for a few minutes to see if there's some things that we could do to potentially help you. And then on the LinkedIn page, if you're not already following us on LinkedIn, I encourage you to do that, because we have a ton of new and updated material that might be relevant, certainly for a specific company that you may work for. And so with that, I'll leave you for the afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you found some value in what I had to share with you. And if it ends where you need to have a plan or some kind of outline of where you stand to help you consider if it's best for you to transition into retirement or when that process might take place, please reach out to us, because we're glad to help. And so with that, have a great afternoon, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.